Hello and welcome to another episode of CollectaThoughts, the show where I collect my thoughts on video games, and today we're gonna be talking about a special one to me, Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duels. And honestly, before this game came out, this would not have been a very special game to me. Not because I don't like Yu-Gi-Oh! Very much in the contrary, but because this was a very competitive focused Yu-Gi-Oh! Game. And I myself am very much a casual player. But when the game released on the 19th, without any prior announcement from what I understand, it was kinda weird, but I decided to just download it and try it. Because at the end of the day, it is a new Yu-Gi-Oh! Game and I'm gonna be interested in it. And as I got into it, I was surprising to find a fairly interesting single player mode. Now this review will cover both sides of this game. I do think that's important, and usually while I do tend to focus a lot on the single player aspect of video games, I'll be honest, I ended up spending a lot more time than I expected with the competitive mode of this game. But we'll get into it. First I want to talk about this solo mode as it is called in the game. Basically a campaign, but not really like any other in Yu-Gi-Oh! Usually Yu-Gi-Oh! Campaigns focus around the anime and their characters, which is normal, you know, that's the characters you recognize, so it's easy to build a story around them. But Master Duels definitely seems to show its colors in what it's trying to appeal to, which seems to be players of Yu-Gi-Oh! The card game, rather than just simply fans of the anime or people who grew up with the game. Because the story focus here goes to the cards themselves, the lore behind some of the archetypes of Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's surprisingly interesting. That being said, it isn't also anything particularly amazing. Cutscenes are mostly just short bits of text mixed in with some imagery that, if you really just put it all together, it would barely be a paragraph of words, so it's not like you're getting some grand epic story. But I do think it is pretty cool to just get a little bit of lore into the archetypes and the different cards of the game. Being said, I do think that the way these stories are structured could be a bit better in terms of presentation and the way it flows as a game. Basically, the way each story is structured is very similar to each other. You get an introduction, you get a tutorial kind of thing, usually introducing the main mechanic of that archetype, so you get an idea of how it plays, since for that specific story you're gonna be playing with those cards, at least with the loner decks, which is a cool idea, but is also one of my first problems comes with this, and that is you end up just seeing a lot of the same cards during each story mode. I don't mind the idea of playing with the same deck or playing with the similar deck in each one of the stages, but maybe the later decks are more complicated or more complete, I guess would be a word for it. Problem is for me is the decks you're playing against are also very similar to the ones you're playing with. Usually I would honestly say that you're playing against decks that are better than yours or more complete than yours, and you're just trying to beat them with a slightly inferior deck. Which honestly also makes the campaign be quite hard. I honestly think it might be by far the hardest Yu-Gi-Oh! Game I've played through, but it doesn't feel incredibly warranted, because while I do think that they put some of the best well-built decks in any Yu-Gi-Oh! Game in this one, it does feel like the difficulty is coming more from your deck not being as good as theirs rather than being a lack of skill on my side, which I admit I'm not the most skillful Yu-Gi-Oh! Player. But something here in my defense is you can also play a lot of these story bits with your own deck, which will allow you to progress as well. And honestly, I never had nearly as much troubles beating any specific fight with my own deck like I had with the loner ones, and I'll be honest, I'm not great at deck building. For most of the game I was mostly just using the structure decks that they offered on the store, which I'll get into the buying stuff in this game in a bit, it might take a while. Regardless, yeah, I do think that I was kind of hitting a wall a lot with some of the decks because they were simply weaker than the opponents. And that also meant that when I eventually did win, it felt more like luck or like the adversary got a really bad hand than me playing the game really well. which, to be fair, in the defense of this game, I do find that I ended up learning these decks a lot better than I would have if I just beat them on the first try, but still, with some of them I definitely felt like I was hitting against a wall for a while. For me, it was definitely the Ritual Summon and the Gem Knights campaigns that were giving me the most problems, and honestly the other ones were not nearly as bad, but also I feel like for some of them I definitely won because, again, the enemy had a bad hand. Regardless, I'll be honest, this is still one of the most enjoyable times I had with the Yu-Gi-Oh campaign, despite the very repetitive cycle that each story has of do a tutorial, then do a duel, then unlock an extra path that has two usually harder duels. Very few of these campaigns ever stray from this formula, and it does get a bit repetitive, if it wasn't of course for the fact that you're playing with such different cards each time. And like I said, I very much still enjoyed it, and enough to 100% it, which means playing each duel at least 2 times, because once you have to play with the loner deck and the other one with your own deck, which honestly maybe wouldn't be the best way to do it. I think maybe sparingly playing the campaigns and then coming back with newer and different decks would probably be the best way to do it, because honestly, because I hadn't really made any deck yet, I ended up beating most of these with some modified structure decks, which the game offers too at the beginning, so you know, not a whole lot of variety, but very much self-inflicted. Now let's talk about a bit about the cards and how you get them. I'll also go a bit into the rules of Yu-Gi-Oh, what is changed here. Not too in-depth, but giving you enough of a perception if you already know how Yu-Gi-Oh plays like. For starters, the currency here is gems. This is the currency that allows you to buy packs and cosmetics, and of course it's a currency that you can also buy with real money. And honestly, maybe my vision here is a bit tinted here because I played a lot of the campaign, but the game gives you quite a lot of this currency early on. Obviously the game is new and they want to attract new players, so there is that, but also it's pretty normal for a lot of these free-to-play games to give you quite a lot of currency at the beginning to get you hooked, so to say. But I think the important thing here is that you can actually build a good deck with the currency you get for free here, meaning that you actually have some chance in the competitive space. So my advice for new players here would definitely be, once you start the game, make your mind up on what kind of deck you want to build, because that will definitely help you build a deck that is competitive without actually putting any money into the game, if that is what you want to do, of course. Other advices on this would be how you buy cards, which also leads me to talk about that. Basically here, instead of buying packs with specific cards, you buy from these massive packs that have basically all the cards in the game, and then from there, depending on the cards you receive from those packs, you will unlock secret packs. These secret packs are the packs you usually see in a game of Yu-Gi-Oh!, the ones that are more focused on their archetypes or groups of archetypes, and it's through these packs that you get to pick more specifically what you want. For example, I got randomly a Dragon Maid deck and I decided that's what I wanted to do for my competitive deck, and so I bought packs that had Dragon Maid cards after I've unlocked that secret pack from receiving that random card. It is a bit weird and convoluted, but trust me when I say that it is very helpful in the way that it allows you to just kind of narrow in on the cards that you actually want, especially within certain archetypes. That being said, there's a bit of an odd limitation here with the 24 hours. Once you unlock a secret pack, it only is available for 24 hours, and after that you'll have to either acquire another card from that pack randomly or craft a card from that pack, unlocking it for another 24 hours. It is an odd choice and obviously seems to be incentivizing, you know, larger spending, which from a free-to-play game is, you know, a bit suspicious, but given how easy it was for me to make a deck, I honestly am not too mad about it, but I do think it is something to be careful about when you're building a deck, and also we have to be kind of just aware where this feature might be taken in the future or how it might be used. As of now though, in the first week of this game launch, I think it's okay. It's not the best, obviously I'd prefer there was no time limit at all, but you know, also not the worst thing ever in terms of a free-to-play game. Now, another thing that also helps a lot with creating a deck and creating the cards that you want is crafting certain cards. Not only can you craft multiples of a card you already own, you can literally just craft any card you want at a certain price. This one is not done with gems, but with this other currency. I'm gonna call it a currency even though it's more like crafting materials. Yes, there is a crafting system, but it is a lot more simple than it looks. Basically, what crafting materials you use to craft a card is simply based on their rarity, and there's only a crafting material for each rarity, so it's fairly easy to know what you can and can't build. For example, each ultra rare card may cost 30 ultra rare materials, and so if you have 30 you can only really build one ultra rare card. And as you can guess, for normals and rares, you'll get a lot more of that currency, allowing you to much more easily acquire those cards or multiples of those cards, which is super useful if you're only looking for a single card or multiples for a single card and you don't want to be looking for that secret pack, or you simply just don't want to spend more gems. I'll give here the example of myself. I wanted to make a Dragon Maids deck. That was a deck I was very curious about building because I think the art looks cool. Like I said, I'm a very casual player. But regardless, you know, I found the secret pack, I got most of the cards I needed, and then for other harder cards to find, a lot of them I could just craft them with the materials I had, since most of the cards within that archetype I simply got from opening packs from it. And if the cards I was looking for were rare or normal, I really did not have to make a hard choice because I just had enough currency to get everything that I needed. Of course, the higher you go in the rarity, the harder it becomes, and of course this is a free-to-play game. So my advice here for free-to-play players would be open one of the bigger packs first. Obviously you don't really have much of a chance. Hopefully get the secret pack for a build you want to do. If you don't, well, you know, maybe try again, but remember these are a lot broader packs and you're probably not gonna get a lot of cards that you actually want. That being said, out of these big packs, I would still recommend the Master Pack because it gives you a chance of getting staples, which you definitely want, especially since this game is a bit of a mix between the TCG and the OCG, and you know, things like Max C are unlimited. Regardless, moving on from there, once you get your secret pack, you should probably focus on that and get all the archetype cards you need. And then after that, I would say with whatever spare money you have, which honestly, if you've been focused on what you want, it's probably still quite a bit. And also if you've completed the campaign. But so with that currency, I would recommend trying to get the other cards that you might need to help your deck that aren't staples, maybe engines that you want to run, things like that, since those once again will be easier to narrow out since they will be in secret packs. And then I would say save your crafting materials to make the staples, because those will be a lot harder to pull since they seem to be only on those bigger packs that have, you know, a chance of pulling pretty much anything in the Yu-Gi-Oh world. At least that would be my recommendation, and of course you're, you know, up to you if you want to follow it or if you just want to go on your own. Honestly, the game is forgiving enough that even I, who definitely messed around and wasted way too many gems at the beginning of the game, still managed to build something okay. Maybe, like I said, very much a casual player. I'm still in gold at the moment. And speaking of gold, let's now talk about this competitive mode. This is definitely the focus of the game. It is a competitive Yu-Gi-Oh game. Obviously, this is in a lot of ways an answer to the more less legal ways of playing modern Yu-Gi-Oh that are out there, virtually at least. Because honestly, there hasn't been something like this since Yu-Gi-Oh! Online, which itself has been closed for, you know, almost 10 years. And since then, the other ways to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Legally have been mostly anime-focused games and Duel Links, which is, of course, is a completely different way of playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And for the people who play real-life Yu-Gi-Oh!, this might still not be it, but I think the idea is very interesting, and especially with its implications for the future, maybe, since because this game has online with international and Japanese players, meaning TCG and OCG, like I said earlier on in the video, this game has a mix of both rules, meaning that this is kind of a unified rule set that from my knowledge really didn't exist before, which I think is cool. I don't know if this could ever translate into real life where TCG players could play against OCG players, since I'm not sure how that would affect things like card translations in real life, so who knows. But I do like the idea that there is something that could happen, or that this sets a standard for Yu-Gi-Oh! Going forward. Now, I'm not well versed enough in either of those Yu-Gi-Oh! Rule sets to be able to tell you what the major difference are here, besides some very obvious cards that are completely unbanned, like the already mentioned Max C, which is forbidden in TCG and is unlimited in the OCG, and that is the way that it is here in this game. Regardless though, I got in fairly easy into this game and I understood the rules fairly easy, so I think most people will be able to, especially people who already play Yu-Gi-Oh! Even link summons, which I really didn't know much about, I'm starting to understand now. Also, another thing I enjoy about Master Duels, at least so far, is that I find myself seeing a lot more variety in decks while playing online. I definitely think this was probably one of the worst problems with Duel Links, is that you really just see whatever 4 decks are the meta at the moment and nothing else, which I'm sure will eventually become a problem here. But right now, in the Wild West of the game just came out, it is fun to feel like every time you go into a new duel you're seeing different cards and different playstyles. Even though I know from a competitive standpoint that might not be the best thing. But like I said once again, it will probably even out at some point when people figure it out. But with that, I've been very much enjoying a Dragon's Maid deck. I think it's very cute, I think it's very fun, and I'm wanting to improve it and make it better, and that honestly is a great reason to keep coming back to this game. But coming back to this game is also one of my problems with the game, since it really just has competitive mode. Yes, there is a room mode that you can invite your friends to play with, and that's nice, but I don't have a whole lot of friends that play Yu-Gi-Oh! And I would like to have other options to play more casually. This would be very simple. Just a casual mode added to the game that doesn't have anything to do with the competitive setting. But even in the competitive setting, and I've seen other people complain about this, is the fact that competitive is based on a single game match. So no best out of 3s here. Whoever wins the first duel is the one who won. That's basically it. Which means there is no side deck right now, and that very much, in my opinion, encourage the types of decks that are very stally and slow, or that catch you off guard with some gimmick. Since there is no game 2 or 3 to kind of side deck in some of the things that could stop them. You know, and of course I'm saying this from a casual player side, and maybe I'm wrong, but at least that's how it feels to me, and I've definitely already noticed some decks that do this, like the Eldlish, for example. I'm not gonna go too deep into it because, once again, very much a casual player here, who wishes they could play this game a lot more casually as well. But continuing here with the competitive path, there is also of course a battle pass, because every multiplayer game now has one of these, and at least this one can be bought with in-game currency, which I think is nice. But honestly, I don't know how much this will last, because honestly the battle pass pays for itself, which makes me think that this is probably only kind of a hey, you're here at launch, have this kind of thing, rather than something that they will actually let you keep buying with in-game currency. I want to be positive, but I also have to remember that this is a Konami game at the end of the day, and that this game kinda came out randomly and no one was ready for it, and maybe that's also why they're trying to give you some incentives to, you know, stay and play the game. And that's kind of the thing. You'll see at the end that this is very much where my opinion on this game hinges. This is an early game, and it's gonna depend a lot on how they go from this. I don't know if I would be willing to come back in a year and review the game again a year later to see what's new. Like, for example, I'll totally come back for new story content, but who knows. Now let's talk about other things. I want to talk about the visuals of this game and the sound as well. It is probably the greatest looking Yu-Gi-Oh game, obviously taking a lot of influence from games like Hearthstone that have very alive boards, so to say, with a lot of detail and moving parts, and I quite enjoy them. The most notable things here are the board itself and the pet you can have on the board with you for some reason. I think it's cute. He like celebrates when you make damage or cries when you take damage. It's surprisingly cute, and again, not something that is necessary, but I think it's cool that it's there. You know, it adds some charm to it visually. Also, the fields are pretty cool. The only thing I'm not a huge fan of is that when you equip a field, you only equip your half of the field. So if you're playing against another player, the other player is gonna look like the field that they pick and you're gonna look like the one you picked, which makes sense. But especially now in early game, there is way too many people just rocking the base standard board, which is a bit boring in my opinion. Probably because they didn't want to waste gems on that, which makes sense since each one of them costs 600 gems and that is the equivalent of 6 packs. Similar thing with also the pets, but you can get quite a few of them just from the campaign and also through battle pass and doing some of the extra objectives. These are very simple, you know, the type of things you see in this game, like beat certain amount of players or tribute summon X amount of times, that type of thing. Sometimes those give you some customization items. While boards, I'm pretty sure you only get one free one from the campaign, which to be fair is a pretty nice looking one, it's the one I use, but that is also just one. And everything else you have to use currency, which you probably want to be spending on cards. Now for other customization items, it's all again very much focused on just aesthetics and nothing that would actually affect the game. You can change your avatar with pictures of the game. It's a bit of a shame that you can't just pick your own picture, but okay, maybe in the future, but of course that would just kind of take away from the ones in the game. But I don't care, please just put this feature in the game, thanks. The other one is kind of a border. You get them with the ranks you get in competitive and other achievements. They're okay, they're really just, you know, bronze, silver, gold and platinum borders, and there's some different ones that are kind of offshoots of that, at least what I've seen so far. And you can also pick the art for the background of your profile, which I think is more interesting, not because it's particularly special or anything, but because it also sets the art for your main menu. So for example, in the battle pass that is on right now, you can get the El Shaddol art for the constructor, and during the campaign you get the one for the Eldlish, which just allows you to, you know, give a different vibe to your main menu, which, you know, you're not going to be spending a whole lot of time in, but it's just kind of nice to have some different art in there sometimes. Again, not stuff that really matters, just visual and aesthetics things that I do think at the end of the day, while meaningless, end up adding a new level of flair, let's call it, that just isn't there in other Yu-Gi-Oh games. And again, while I think that the Hearthstone influence might not be for everyone, I personally think makes this game look not only good but distinct from its more anime based adaptations, which I think also ends up giving it a more mature feeling, I think. And while I don't mind the more cartoony and childish look of something like Duel Links, it is definitely one of those games that, you know, whenever I'm in public and I'm playing that on my phone, I get some weird looks. Not that I can play this on my phone yet, but it is coming to Android and iOS at some point, which I think would also make me play it more personally, even if some of these duels might be longer than what you usually get with a Duel Links duel. Now, sound-wise, it sounds okay. I'm really not gonna go too deep into it. It sounds good, but let's be honest, if you're like me, you're gonna turn off the sound of the game because you're gonna have either other things on the background, and I definitely would not be playing this game with sound on once it comes out on smartphones. You know, I don't want to be that guy. Also, in a more realistic situation, even if I'm wearing headphones, I don't want to be listening to that. I'd probably just rather listen to music on my phone. Regardless though, my final opinion on this game is it's really good, but it can be better. I think so far the way the microtransaction bits are implemented, they seem fairly fair so far. Of course, a lot can change, and you know, who knows how this game is gonna be in a couple of months, but right now it's pretty good. But also, if competitive is not your thing, it's really hard to recommend. You can play the campaign and it's free, so I mean, why not? But personally, I just wish there were a few more game modes for me to kind of stay with it, as someone who isn't huge into competitive play. Regardless though, even with that said, I do think that this is probably one of the best Yu-Gi-Oh games to have come out in a long time. Visually it's very polished, it is fairly easy to build a deck, there's a lot of good things about it, there's even a feature to draw 5. It's a feature that allows you to kind of test out your deck by seeing what an opening hand could look like. I think that's a cool thing that I didn't talk about, but it's in this game. There's also some small things I could nitpick about it, but honestly I think the good really outweighs any of the bad so far, and for those reasons I am giving Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel a 7 out of 10. It is a pretty strong 7, and I hope that it eventually becomes something like an 8, because I do think that the potential is there. This is something that Yu-Gi-Oh! Players have been asking for quite a long time, and I think if they iron out the kinks, add a few more game modes, I think they could really have something special here, or they already have something special here and they just need to kind of work on it. Of course, this will always be an uphill battle for this game because there are other options that are completely free but less legal to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Even in the very similar way to this one, but that also ends up being this one's strong suit. It is the legal way to play real Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now online, since, you know, like I said before, Yu-Gi-Oh! Online has been down for years, and the multiplayer for some of the other Yu-Gi-Oh! Games like Legacy of the Duelist or Link Evolution were not particularly the best. I think this could really be a great change for Yu-Gi-Oh! Who knows? Regardless, recommendations wise, I mean, it's free. If you really want to know, give it a try. I think it's worth it, if that's what you're asking me. Regardless of whatever your choice is though, I hope that you enjoyed watching, and if so, please consider subscribing, liking, commenting, and even disliking, since that doesn't really matter now. But regardless of any of that, I hope that you're having a good day, and remember to believe in the heart of the cards. Yes, I'm gonna end this review about a game that seems to be trying to distance itself from the anime by doing an anime reference. Goodbye.